yours is working? Oh, mine
All
is
right,
working.
hello,
also.
hello. Oh, look, it works. Wow, technology, isn't this amazing? Wow. For a moment there, I thought I was being censored. It was a sort of a form of privacy here, but seems like it was just a technical glitch, and those do happen. Anyway, welcome to the panel, to the session. Thank you for joining us. My name is Sven Schrecker. I'm the Chief Architect for IoT Security Solutions at Intel, and one of the co-chairs of the Industrial Internet Consortium's Security Working Group. So today we have an illustrious group of panelists here, and we will be providing you customer perspectives on security for IoT. So I find this a fascinating subject, and we'll dig into a little bit of what are some of the challenges, et cetera. And so I hope we have a very informative and entertaining panel for you. So to kick things off, what I will do is I will allow each of the panelists to introduce themselves and give a short background on where they come from and what their perspective is on this topic. And then we'll jump into some of the questions and begin to explore. So without further ado, I will pass it on.
Well, thank you, Sven. My name is Ben Johnson. I'm with SnapOn Tools, basically a division of SnapOn that deals in diagnostic tools, service information, and shop management systems. We serve the automotive repair industry. And so when we talk about security, today we license most of our product is through a subscription basis, which requires logins and passwords. And so we're always concerned about security and the unintended use of our products, typically pirating where somebody's sharing a password or things like that. So, and it's definitely changed with the evolution of IoT. And I'll stop it there for now.
Hi, I'm Colin Tate. I'm from Weatherford Services. We're an oil and gas service company. Oil and gas industry security is a very important subject. We are a very guarded industry by nature, and as such, our customers expect us to always secure all of our services, all of our data. We work in many, many countries, and because of that, we've got sovereign data rules, plus we've got other customers where data can't leave country through either regulation or just from that company policy. So from a security perspective, we must always start by designing security from the very onset. We can't have it as a last-minute design issue. We must always start with security.
Hello, my name is Annette, and I'm from Delta Group. We are owned two power plants, actually three. Under me, only two. Internet of Things is one of the basic things we're doing since we started to planning the plants. So it's very natural for us, all these security issues, and we cannot do it any other way except with integrating all the security inside the plants from the beginning.
Excellent. So we have representatives here from automotive, oil and gas, energy. These are not new industries, but there are changes occurring in these industries. So I have this really burning desire to find out from you guys, what do you think of IoT? How's this working out for you?
Well, from our perspective, it's actually opened up a lot of opportunities for us. So, when you think about the automotive service industry and the fact that not only our software packages and our diagnostic devices are becoming applications and products of a part of the IoT network or infrastructure, but our customers' vehicles that interface with our customers' shops are all starting to be open to communication, and we think that allows us to better serve our customers so that they can better serve their customers. The example we were talking about a little earlier is just imagine today, there's a little light on your car that you may or may not really ever think about. And when you turn on the key, it comes on, and it's called a check engine light. And if you're driving your car and that light comes on, most of us have a little bit of a uneasy moment, because that light can come on for thousands of reasons. It can come on because you left your gas cap loose, or it can come on because your engine's about to stop running. So, and anything in between. So with the IoT possibilities and the connecting of that car to their service provider to our software, we're able to now grab that information from the vehicle, advise the shop, who can advise their customer of why that light might have come on, what possible cures there are for it, and what the severability is, or how soon should they get the car in the shop. Is it something they should bring it right in for, or can it wait a week or two and just come in on a normal schedule? And that matters a lot, because what it also means is that when the car does show up, we have the possibility of having the right parts there already ordered and in stock and on the shelf, the right technician, the skill set to address that problem, and things like that, which today we have no clue. Today, if you call me and say my check engine light just came on, my only real answer is we'll bring the car in, we'll plug in a tool, we'll read the code, and we'll find out what to do with it from there. So IoT really opens up a lot of value possibilities with the diagnosis, getting the parts value supply chain involved, and making sure that all these things can happen much more smoothly than they ever could before.
So I have to tell you, I hate that check engine light.
Everybody does.
What kills me is that it's either on or it's off. I mean, if you could have like an intensity to it, where if it's blinking, I need to stop. You know, it is IoT. Maybe there's a little bit more than a binary value. Just saying, it's not up to you, but I'm just saying.
Even those of us that know it pretty well kind of have a heart palpitation when it comes on our own cars, trust me.
So Sven, for Weatherford, IoT is really just an evolutionary step for us. We've been doing and perform real data services. We have done for years, and we're doing it right. We have services right now performing real-time data services. So when you describe IoT to some of our businesses, they say, well, that's what we already do. The big difference with IoT from our perspective is that now we can suddenly, instead of having great big boxes and it's going on specific jobs, now we can start deploying at scale, and we can put it on every job. And it's also unobtrusive. And we can increase our data gathering capability. And now, once we have that, it then leads to data analytics, because you'll probably see every booth out there has a great big title, data analytics. They've got this data analytic platform. To do data analytics, you've got to have data. And I just said that we are a guarded industry, and data is very important. And so therefore, getting data to actually perform analytics is a definite issue. Our customers have huge amounts of data. We also have data. If you want to go away and perform analytics, you kind of have to start marrying or integrating those data sets. You also have to start looking at the way that you store that data. Are you going to store the data in traditional fashions, or are you not? And once you start looking at those types of areas, security pops up again. So security starts at the very beginning with the device and goes all the way through. And so that's where IoT is going to start, and already is making a difference for us, is just the pure data gathering capability. Because now, once we get that data, we can perform data analytics. Once we perform data analytics, we get better, improved insights into our actual services for every product line that we have. And from there, we can then start informing the operator on maintenance schedules, tool operation, and ultimately we can improve the reservoir production capability.
Gotcha. So quick follow-up on that then. So it sounds like that it's really IoT here is an evolutionary improvement over what you had before. It gives more insight and more connectivity, more data, more visibility.
Yeah, it's a clear step forward, and it's not just a step, it's a massive leap. And it's a leap not just from the fact that we can now gather more data, it's a leap in the fact that the technology is not becoming a burden to deployment. And deployment is a real key. And we want deployment to always be safe and to be unobtrusive. So you need to look at solutions that are able to perform both functions. And if you look at the IoT devices, the gateways, and everything else out with all the vendors outside, it's very rare that you're going to see something the size of that table. They're all small. Yep. That size and the ease of deployment, ease of provisioning, are keys to us to be able to deploy successfully.
Anat?
IoT proved us to help the power plants to improve them. So as I said, we have 3 power plants in our company. and it helps us collecting the data. As Colin said, the data is very important. Although we are isolated and everything is inside the company, it gives us the ability and the operating company to know and to understand, because we have similar turbines all over the power plants, give us the ability to affect one or the other in the maintenance perspective and problems if we have. So it gives us a lot of information, and what is the most important thing we collect is data, as Colin said.
Right. So again, it's the access to data, the greater the visibility, the more convenience. But as to the next step, so now that we've got IoT, what about the security aspects? Is there cause for concern there? Does it require extra consideration? How does that then translate into having these new wonderful features that I agree we all want these, but is there a side effect?
As I told you, we are isolating, okay? We build the plants in the beginning that it's an island. Every plant is an island. We have gateways to get the information out. Nothing can penetrate in. No bits can go inside the plants. It doesn't affect the turbines or the national grid that we are connected to. We can only collect the data outside and manage it inside our management network, not in the internet. We don't load anything outside to the world. To the world, we are protected by firewalls and gateways and secured area, DMZ area, and things like that to connect to the other world. But we have actually two networks inside our business. One is the production network, the other is the management network, and then there is the whole world around us. And in each position, we have security measures.
Gotcha. So it's really about isolation, segmentation, separation,
exactly,
to enforce the boundaries there.
And this is how it was built from the beginning.
Right. So, but how about you guys? Are there concerns about some of the new IoT technologies that are making their ways into here? So the functionality is excellent and the capability is improved. Does the security have to follow suit?
Well, right. From our perspective, our main security challenge has been in the information that we license to our end users. So we got, around 100,000 customers that license information from us. Before the internet, before broadband, before all these things, this information that we have is pretty graphically rich. So we used to distribute that via, it used to be CDs and then DVDs and all that, and we had encryption on the program, but of course as soon as you put encryption on the program, it gets hacked. And so security's always been an issue. It's not something that's new with IoT. As the broadband has come online, as the internet has become more pervasive, we've now discontinued pretty much any disk distribution, and IoT has actually helped us. It hasn't maybe solved the problem that we had, but it's given us better visibility as to how pervasive the problem is. And now we've been able to put countermeasures in place so that we can at least track and understand who's abusing those subscriptions, who's abusing our software, and so we can actually take action that we could never take before. So for us, IoT has actually been helpful. It may be, I guess if you look at the bad side of it, it's probably easier for somebody to share a login and a password than it was for them to copy off all those DVDs and hand them out. But at the same time, we now have countermeasures in place so we can track and detect that sort of thing, and then we can take action and hopefully convert those people into customers. But if not, we give them a free room at the other hotel.
And Colin?
From our perspective, when you talk about IoT, suddenly people start thinking, okay, it's going to be on the web, it's wild and free, everything's exposed. I think from one of the earlier sessions, the gentleman was explaining how they went away and saw all these, I think one was a steel mill. It was on the internet and the company didn't even know. There's a definite fear that data is going to be exposed. And that fear means that not only do you have to show that you are secure, but you need to go the extra step. From our perspective, we start with security from the very beginning. From the last project we did, I think the first 5-6 weeks, all we looked at was security. The whole reason for that was we didn't want to go away and start building a design, start stumbling down a road, think, okay, this is fantastic, this is all going to work, and then suddenly we come to a roadblock or a aha moment that, wait a minute, this is really unsafe, or this is not to the level of security that we require, or the customer experience, or our deployment, the way we'll have to deploy the devices, or the whole solution is not going to be adequate, or it's not going to be easy or potentially unsafe. So we must look at security from the very beginning. Once we have security at the beginning, we basically we're able to establish key features, and once we have those key features, we can then start moving our design forward, but we start with security.
Gotcha. And so I think that might be one of the key messages, is that if you don't bring the security in early, it's very difficult to retrofit it, right? So in some industries, security has always been there, in energy, in oil and gas. Automotive, I really don't remember that much in the past, other than sort of the lock and the key on it, right?
Right.
There certainly might have been more. It wasn't exposed to the owner of the device, the car in this case. So is there a change that's happening now, where the security gets a little bit more awareness? Is it becoming more of a topic? Is there more awareness now? Does that require additional considerations? At the very least, more people asking questions about it.
Well, I can tell you in the automotive industry, it's a huge topic right now. So, first of all, from my company's perspective, again, what we had to do was really evaluate the risk versus the pain we wanted to inflict on our customers. So, we live in a world where these shops are not all that sophisticated, and they're not going to easily move to a very secure dual-factor authentication process, sending texts to their cell phone so they can authenticate their way into my software. They'll just leave me and go to my competitor who doesn't do that. So we have to always weigh the pain we can inflict on them and the security that we can impose. And then, we make up the difference, as I said earlier, with the tracking and able to track down and prosecute or convert the people that are abusing the system. In the automotive industry at large, you kind of made a good point, which is the automobile is notoriously non-secure. I'll just tell a quick story. In 2014, I got married in Hawaii, and we were at the hotel, and my sister-in-law, my now sister-in-law, I had to run out of the store for a second, and we had this big minivan, and she had just this little Chevy something. And she said, well, take my car to the store because yours is parked way out there. And as I walked out of the hotel, I realized I didn't know where she had parked. So I pushed the little panic button, to sound the horn. Well, 5 cars in the parking lot started honking their horns, and one started up.
Wow.
All GM products. So, this was, and since then, of course, some of you have seen the internet pictures of the people that have taken control of a Jeep and driven it off a road. It wasn't really in their wheelhouse. They were looking at customer convenience. They weren't looking at security at all. Now it's all about security, and it's, they are weighing the same challenges that I have, which is, when you're dealing with things like right to repair, which ensures my right as a provider of information to the aftermarket, the information that they need to diagnose and repair that car, their trust in me to make sure that the data that I'm licensing from them is secure, and the customer's safety and reliability, as we're talking about more and more of these connected cars that are sending information out and potentially, able to be taken over and bad things done with them. It's a huge topic of discussion at this point in the automotive sector.
Right, and you mentioned the panic button. I always thought that was the car locator as well, so in the busy parking lot. So how about you guys? So in the industries where, number one, there's an assumption of security, and number two, in general, folks don't like to get into that so much, right? And you don't like to disclose. You've never needed to disclose. Has any of that changed in IoT? Is there sort of an expectation that people want to know more, or is it just sort of just tell me that it's secure and I'm fine? I mean, do you find that there's more introspection?
So when you talk about IoT, first thing that kind of comes to mind is convenience. And then you suddenly think, okay, that's going to be in the cloud. So instantly people are thinking, okay, they can get to something, it's going to be easy to do. And then once you start explaining it, security suddenly pops up, and you go, wait a minute, is a high school student going to be able to log into to the cloud and get my data? And it's just a fear. So we've got to go away and step by step walk through the whole process to make sure that we've got security in place, we've got the way that we register devices, deploy devices, everything is basically covered. Once we are able to do that, we can then go away and gain trust from our customers, both internal and external. We have internal services, and we've also got external, obviously our clients are externals, so we manage both areas. We must always, and that's where the ease of use. I laugh when you say just what a username, password. Everyone, when you talk about password security, everyone's probably got the same password. You log in at work, you want to just log in once and everything just works. When you have that type of that scenario, it's very difficult to ensure that you are secure. There's lots of ways, there's federated security, etc. But then you also have cases where someone leaves a company, you want to make sure that they're not able to access data anymore. So if you've got IoT devices, how are you going to go away and manage that? So there's lots of different problems that you have when you have both internal and external, and that you've got to start managing it. One of the reasons we use secure device onboarding is because we want to be able to provision devices way before we deploy them. So they're provisioned, you've got the actual securities at hardened chip level. We deploy it, it's one click and away it goes. There's no distribution of passwords, no distribution of usernames. That removes all that potential risk. As soon as you start explaining that, trust comes up. So we've just got different pressures. You need to understand the pressures, and that's what leads us to basically always put security at the very beginning of the design process. And it typically takes a little bit. And people always want stuff. They think it's going to be easy. They think IoT, put it on there, plug it in, away it goes to the cloud. Analytics just comes naturally. AI suddenly just springs out and works. Nothing's as easy as that. You've got to start understanding, one, what do you actually want to do? Who's your actual customers? You then want to go away, what's your customer experience? And do you want to have dual factor authentication? All these things start playing. Once you've got all that, you then need to go away and work out, okay, so if we're going to make it one touch, what security do we need to put in place to make sure that we hit a certain level of security? In some of my other products, we've got regulation in place. So in those cases, you're able to instantly say you come up to a certain level of, you meet that regulation. People say, okay, you're secure. Well, okay, you meet that regulation. Doesn't mean you're secure or not, but you meet that regulation. So it's always a struggle, but we always put it first, and then if you do that, you can start saying, okay, this is what's going to make it secure.
Gotcha. So it's interesting because sometimes when people come out with a new product, and from the Intel side, when we engage and we start talking about security, everybody nods their head and says, yes, very important, very important. But at the end of the day, they'll say, well, here are the priorities, and we'll do security in the next version. So I'm very glad to hear that amongst you guys that is not the case. I love to hear that.
Where I come from, security is something, and threats are something that we live with in all our lives. So security is something that's on the table all the time. We have a lot of regulation we have to meet for us. So first of all, the security, and then all the rest. So every provider has to be standard in a certain level to be able to connect to our plants and to meet the regulation of the country.
Well, so I think that's interesting. So of all the panelists here, so you sort of have a double dose there. So number one, from in Israel, you mentioned that you consider sort of an island, right? So there's that aspect of it. And then your industry is actually, within the government. I don't know if it's technically within the government, right? It has that government level.
It's the private company, but we are under regulation of the Ministry of Energy.
Right, and that's where I was going with that. So for you, that regulation probably provides a set of guidelines, right?
Yes.
For other industries, and I'll say this, for IoT in general, there's not always a standard, there's not always a regulation to follow, but there's always the threat of the litigation, right? Which we want to stay far away from. And the regulation and the standardization does provide us a certain level of comfort or support there. What do you guys think of the level of standardization and regulation and the threat of litigation within IoT with respect to security?
Well, so regulations is always, you love regulations, and the next minute you could say regulations are either slowing you down or adding cost. It was a good talk yesterday with the lady
We provided
from the EU. and you could see that regulations at their heart are well-meaning. And I think regulations are a way to basically get a foundation level in place, but it doesn't mean you're going to be secure. You still need to understand what threats are out there. When you deploy a device, you need to understand what's the worst case scenario. Right. In an oil and gas well, worst case scenario can be quite bad. Everyone knows what oil and gas is explosive, so typically it's not going to be a good day if an oil and gas well goes bad. So we've always got to think of the worst case scenario, not just from a pure environmental concern, but also from a human concern. We don't want people getting hurt. So once you start looking at it from that perspective, you start working back. How do we actually go away and make this secure? How do you make the communication secure? How do you make the device secure? How do you make the installation secure? Installation's got to be secure, not just from a data threat, but it's also got to be secure from an environmental threat. So there's lots of areas that suddenly come into the whole design process. And once you start putting all them in place, that's when you start cutting down exactly what your solution is going to be.
And everything gets smarter, okay? Each side, it's like a game. Each side is getting smarter, so the other side should be smarter than the other, and it always gets up, and the regulations have to fit itself in the situation.
Yeah, I would agree also with understanding the worst case scenario. That's early on as we wrestled with it, and our worst case scenario is that somebody gets in front of some repair information that they shouldn't have access to. We don't have anything public facing where they can get to PII, to credit card information, to anything like that. So we're a little less concerned than some might be, but still, it's the trust that our vendors have with us that we're licensing data from, and it's our ability to track people down. But if we had more sensitive information, obviously we'd have to become tougher and more stringent in the application of security. As it is, I do like, I think you said it. It's regulation and standardization. It's kind of your, I don't just want to say it, but it's your CYA card, right? Well, if we got hacked, well, at least we followed the accepted practices, and oh well. But and we try to minimally adhere to whatever standards we can find, but we don't take that as a get out of jail free card either. We still try to make sure we're doing as much as we can to make sure that we're as secure as we can be without running off our customer base.
Actually, on that talk yesterday that was talking about the regulation, it was quite insightful, the amount of work that was done prior to the actual policy being delivered. I never realized how much work and how much discussion actually went into the regulations. And so from that perspective, when I was listening to that, I was thinking, okay, so we're making the regulation, all was huge. They were taking advice from all these different bodies, all these different industry leaders. So when it comes out, probably it's going to be really, really quite strict. No, it's not strict. Strict's not the right word. It's going to be quite reaching, and it's going to pull the whole industry up to a certain level. Once everyone gets to that level, that's fantastic. But then, as technology improves, the regulations must also keep up with technology, because IoT it's moves so fast, and technology moves so fast. So we must always be looking not just to meet a regulation. You must always look to pass it.
Well, exactly. One of the challenges I think that you have with standardization and regulation is you kind of identify the attack surface so that any would-be hackers, they can say to themselves, boy, there's a standard. If I can hack that, then I can get into a lot of companies. Whereas if everybody is a little bit different and scattered, then they can only target on certain aspects. And there's some discussion, again, back in the automotive world, that is actually fearful about publishing here's how we're going to secure all these cars, because if you say, here's the way we're going to secure it, then that's just a challenge, right? To that whole element of the dark web, or whatever you want to call it, that says, now I'm going to go get them. So there's pros and cons to it, I think.
This is only the basic. Then you have to add your own perspective and your own protection to differentiate between.
And I think Colin said it best. I mean, this is not something that's ever going to go away. As soon as we had the first virus that showed up on a PC, and antivirus software to thwart it, which is continuing to evolve and evolve and evolve with spyware and malware, it's going to be the same in anything that's involved with the IoT. It's going to be they're going to get smarter, we're going to get smarter, they're going to get smarter, we're going to get smarter, and we're going to it's going to be a never-ending thing, I believe.
For us, it's just a tag name because it was always there. The threats and everything, it's always there for a lot of years. We always considered it, we always thought about it in Israel, and now we have just the name and the tag and everything to talk about, but we always concerned about it, and we always thought about it and build the walls and everything.
So, you guys mentioned that the security has always been present. We need to maintain this level of security, but also your industries are mature, right? So there is a process, there has been a process, and there will always be a process. It's clear that the security, if it were to interfere with that process, would not be looked upon very fondly, and it'd probably be looking for a way to not do it that way to ensure that the process continues. So as the owner and operator of your particular domain, is there anything security related that would make your life easier? So an example that I would throw out there is after we see a large install, the owner operators generally want to say, all right, how can I validate the integrity of what I just rolled out? And we'll say, well, let's do, I come from Intel, so I'll say, well, let's do a attestation of the secure boot. Say, all right, great. Well, half these devices can't do that. So it's a little late to think about that now. That should have been thought of before, and that topic has come up a couple of times. You need to think these things through before on the security. So are there things that could be done that would make your life easier so that at the end of the day you can make these things work together and have your process work better with the security in place?
Well, I feel like I'm in Disneyland. I mean, yeah, anything that would allow us to, reduce our attack surfaces, to improve the security without inflicting pain on our customers is always welcome to be looked at. We have a certain number of customers that actually don't even use a username and login. Years ago, we did it all through IP authentication. Well, that now is not very robust. So we implement a variety of workarounds now to try to keep IP, but then add a second layer of security that doesn't require too much pain on their part, but try to find the right medium. Anything that allows the user to still have a relatively pain-free experience and helps us, because if I can downsize my anti-piracy team, then that's good for my company as well, right? If I can save that expense. So I don't know what that is. I don't know what that looks like, but anything that would allow me to strike that balance would be a welcome addition to our technology stack.
So I'll be selfish, and I'll actually say some regulation would actually be quite welcome. And the reason for that is because you could immediately tell customers who are very guarded, we meet that regulation. That would definitely ease a lot of people's concerns. And there's lots of regulations out there already out there, lots of policy standards, and it's really just allowing these policies and standards to be potentially just pointed to what if we had, and I think you're on the IoT industry's body. If you were able to say this is a base level, everything should meet that. That would be very useful, just from a selfish perspective when I'm trying to get projects approved, and then also from a testing perspective. We test so hard for so long, and when you release a product, first thing you think about is, okay, the first thing is fantastic, is we've met the date, it's out. The next second you're thinking, okay, are we really that safe? So it'd be nice to have something to actually have a comfort level.
Interesting. So
To have less threats.
that would be nice, yes. So that's interesting. So if you had this standardization, this regulation, you could just turn around and go to your suppliers and your vendors and your service folks and just say, I have to meet this. Do you meet this? Right? And you could sort of pass the requirements down the chain so that they're implemented at the lowest levels and come back up to you as an executable, as a hook, so that you can actually implement and test and verify and monitor the security. So maybe there's actually quite a bit of value to this regulation, to this standardization, if for no other reason besides you being able to say, I have this level, for you to turn around and say, for me to do this, I need A, B, and C, and push it down the chain and have them implement that and provide that for you, whatever it may be.
It'll be much easier because some providers doesn't understand what we talk about, and oh, you're Israeli, pain in the ass, I'm sorry. Just why do you need this? Why do you set so high level of security expectation? Why you need, they charge us more for that and load us with all these expenses because it's not in their standard. And if it was in the standard of the tools and the softwares, it would be much easier to plug and play everything together and to be able to meet our standards and our regulations.
I think there's definitely, like, vendors like yourself, Intel, and other vendors. I think they get security, and it's probably because they're always guarded as well. Large companies do get attacked a lot, so therefore security is starting to be inbred right across, not just a particular area of the industry, but right across the industry. And because of that, I think security, when you start talking about security, everyone in this space understands it. It's really the implementation of that security and how you can go away and create a complete solution. You could have the best security in one area of your product, but the rest of it could be exposed, so therefore your whole solution's exposed. So it's understanding what security means as a collective, and from there you can then build up. But yes, we would definitely be pushing it down to come all the way back up. Again, you look at your core competencies. We want to go with people where core competency is security and they think about security. That way we can add our needs and integrate it with theirs and overall build a better solution. We don't want to step into areas that are not our core competency and start dictating because it's not our core competency.
Right. So having the ability to level it out so that there's less variability in the security capability of each of the products, so that it's at a known level. Again, sort of ties into that some kind of a standard or a regulation that provides that, so that you can enforce that from the vendors. So I'd like to see what the audience has to think. And so we'll open it for questions in just a moment. So as you're thinking, if you have any questions on this, maybe we can have a final statement from each of you, and then see if the audience has any questions to follow up.
Sure, and following up with that last, we talked about regulations. I kind of mentioned earlier that one of our challenges is the ability of security we can impose on our customers, because if make them too irritated with us, there's competitors that they can go to. But if there was a standard, if there was a regulation that said everybody has to meet this user experience, it would at least take that element out off the table so we could secure it up to a level. You know, it would just have to be something that's reasonably reasonable. But I do think that would actually go a long way towards helping keep the I don't want to call them less ethical, but people that are less maybe knowledgeable about their own security breaches that may be occurring, and kind of keeping companies like ours from achieving the security we'd like to get, because we have to maintain an experience to keep our customers. That all said, I think that you know, as we've talked about, it's always going to be an evolving thing. I'm sure we could sit up here in 3 years from now and have the same discussion with completely different outcomes of what we've learned in the last 3 years. But it's definitely, as I said, IoT, I think, for us at least, has given us better visibility and better tools to manage that security and better options. And we're just looking forward to continuing that journey.
I'd just say, just put security at your initial design. Design it from the very start, and you'll be in much better shape.
I agree with my colleagues. Standardization and the implementation of security in the process from the beginning and in all the vendors will be helpful.
All right, do we have any questions out there? All right, so if nobody else has a question, I actually do have a question. So in general, in IoT, in industrial IoT, when I go in and I go talk about security, you get the nods, you get the, yes, that's important, but I get the distinct feeling that what's really important is the reliability and the safety of the system, okay? At the end of the day, that's what people really care about, right? And really the security is just there to enforce that. In some cases, there might be some resilience, in some cases, there might be some privacy, but in general, it's sort of trumped by the safety and the reliability. Where do you see the security fitting, you know, in the real world, in that sort of trustworthiness space, where we're really traditionally talking about the reliability and the safety?
Well, in our world, you're exactly right. Again, because the worst thing that happens in my product is that somebody gets unauthorized access to repair information. The repair shops, that's not their problem, that's my problem, right? So they are more concerned with uptime of the system and the uptime, and of course, safety isn't such an issue. The safety is really what the information that we provide, which is provided by the vehicle manufacturers, but it's all about uptime. If that system goes down for 35 seconds while we're implementing a new security patch, for example, trust me, my phones ring, and they ring fast. So I would say that's a very accurate assessment, at least from our perspective.
Our systems must be safe, reliable, and secure. It's just straightforward. We've got three tenets: safety always first, reliability very close second, and then you've got security. And that's also they're really all at the same level. You could argue one's higher than the other, but really they're all at the same level. You could view it as a seat, a tripod that you're sitting on. You've got to have all three to be able to deploy and to be trusted, and we must always have those three.
Energy is the same as the gas and oil. All three of them are very important and must be together.
Excellent. All right. Well, then, we do have a question. There's a microphone right next to you. We have the microphone challenge again here. If you'll come up here, I'll hand you mine.
Thank you very much. You were very fast as a chair to ask for questions, so we didn't have time to think about it. But I do have a question, or perhaps first one comment, because you said that standards, certification can become tick boxing, checking the tick box. But I'm wondering whether that's really true, because you know, if FedEx loses 300 million because of the NotPetya attack, they still will lose it, even if they have checked all the boxes. So perhaps it's shifting it to cyber insurance rather than they can cover it. But one question about this standards and certification, you know, it does not necessarily need to be connected to regulation. It could also be the industry itself. So do you think, does the panel think that the IoT community itself should start developing more standards for security and certification and kind of do it themselves, even if there isn't any law necessarily requiring that? And is that feasible? And at what level does that happen? Is that the very small device level or the system level? So what is happening, and you probably know what's happening in the industry.
All right, so I will turn that over to the panelists. However, don't walk away, or let me see where you go, because that topic of cyber insurance, we'll make that a topic for next year, because I think there's a lot, we could fill an entire session just on that one. But do you guys have any comments to him about that?
I think you're going to have to summarize it. These speakers do a good job of putting our voices out there, but
Yeah,
I
we can
can't
hear and understand the question.
All right, so let me summarize. So it was actually a multi-part question. So to begin with, the comment was that simply enforcing the regulation doesn't actually solve the problem for you. Things can still happen, and guess what? It's your fault. You can't go point your fingers. So the first part of the question was, what about that?
Yeah, so I thought it was a fantastic, I actually heard, I thought it was a fantastic question. And he's 100% correct. When you look at standards, guidelines, policies, regulations, it is a tick box. People get comfort from tick boxes. And that's why I said earlier, it's a tick box that you must, it's a bare minimum for me and for our product. It's a foundation level of security or anything that we do, whether it's security, whatever the product is. For us, it's a bare level. We must always strive to be a lot more than that. And the other part of the question was, where does it actually fit? Is it at the lowest level, the highest level? I think
All levels.
I don't like looking at point solutions. I like looking at overall products. And I think I think every area, there's different levels of, I think certain people are going to be focused on one area. Nice for them to have a foundation. Other people focused on another area, another foundation. And then as a general product, you can then say, we've met right across the board, but we've also put some special sauce in here, and we've got a more secure. Foundational level is great, and it's just a tick box, you're 100% correct. But we must always strive to not just get above it, but way above it.
You have to look at the whole picture and the whole plant and see where the holes are and identify them and protect them. You cannot stay in one level.
Yeah. We are very focused on detection. I mean, we kind of come to the conclusion that we'll probably never, as soon as you say you're unbreakable, you get broken. Yeah. So it's not about if, it's about when, and it's about how quickly we know it so that we can take countermeasures to deal with it. And again, that's really establishing and maintaining the trust we have with the people we license information from and the companies that we license information to. We're not so concerned about PII because that's completely insulated, but we do a lot of monitoring. Any abnormal activity on our data services and things we look into immediately to see whether something's going on that we didn't anticipate. And it's all about, I think she said it, kind of, finding the holes, if there is a hole, shutting that hole very quickly, then analyzing how that hole happened and going after, if you can, whoever exposed it.
So shutting it down and making sure it doesn't happen again. So with that, I think our panel has come to an end. If I could have a round of applause for our panelists, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you all for coming out, and hopefully it was an enjoyable session for you. Hopefully you learned a little bit of something. If you have any questions, we'll be probably walking out right over here. And I wish you a wonderful experience at the rest of IoT Solutions World Congress. Thank you very much.